Today on Blue 58, the Packers hammered the Bears in Chicago and started 2023 in style. Let's unpack this delightful Week 1 win together.
Blue 58!
Hello and welcome to another episode of Blue 58, the one and only podcast of thepowersweep.com. I am your host, John Meerdink, and I am happy to be with you here for another episode. O me of little faith, why do you doubt? I, of course, predicted the Bears would win in Week 1. I predicted quite wrong, and I am happy to be quite wrong. The idea behind my prediction for the Bears beating the Packers was that they would probably be a little bit further along just with where they were as a team than the Packers would be. That looked completely wrong in so many ways. The Packers looked like the much more complete team, and it showed in just so many ways. They took advantage of opportunities to create mismatches and take advantage of aggressive tendencies by the Bears. They avoided costly mistakes, and they just played with a fire and urgency that the Bears simply could not and did not match in any way. This was an incredible win for the Packers. They looked ready to execute. They did. The Bears weren't, and they didn't. It's really as simple as that, but nothing is quite that simple. If it was just a simple matter of execution or being ready to play or any of those things, maybe you get a small win, a win by a touchdown, a field goal, something like that. But the Packers took the Bears apart. Everything they did, the Bears could not answer. And whenever the Bears did start to answer, the Packers came up with an even bigger play. To kind of dive into how the Packers got to that point, though, I think we got to look back at what I laid out as the paths to victory for the Packers in the preview. There were 3 things that I thought the Packers needed to do to give themselves a really good shot at winning. They had to protect Jordan Love with the game plan. They had to get Aaron Jones involved. And then they had to steal a couple of big plays. Point by point there, protecting Jordan Love with the game plan. It felt like they really did that. None of the game plan-oriented stuff, none of the things that seemed like the Packers were really trying to emphasize with their game plan, felt like they were putting too much stress on Jordan Love. And I think you can look at his performance on 3rd and 4th down in particular as good evidence of that. When the Packers needed conversions, when they had to have a play from Love to keep a drive going, everything was comfortable. It was easy for him to execute. It was easy for him to find the open man. Whatever he needed to do in those situations, he was absolutely, completely comfortable doing it. That's, I think, a sign of a good game plan, of good preparation. When you know what your money plays are going to be and they're tailored well to the people you have on your field and to the quarterback, that's a great job of dovetailing what you're doing to what your quarterback is capable of doing. On top of that, they did get Aaron Jones involved. Not quite, perhaps, as much as they should have in the first half, but when they did it, both in the first half and then early in the second half as well, it really, really worked. It really needs no explanation other than that. The throwback screen to Jones, a great example of getting the ball to your best playmaker on offense and letting him make plays, and he did. And then the 4th and 3 play where they just isolate Jones in space, a little angle route there working against a linebacker, let him run away from him, and he did. Aaron Jones can make magic happen when he gets the ball in his hands, and he was more than happy to do that for the Packers today. Finally, stealing some big plays. The throwback screen we just mentioned to Jones is a perfect example. That's really not something that you see as a regular, core thing of anybody's offense. It's something that might come up once a month, once every 3 weeks, something like that. But it's really not something that you'd say, this is one of our bread and butter plays. This is what we want to build our offense around. But it was there. They called it at exactly the right place, and it worked. Then going for it on 4th and 3, another good example. On defense, the Quay Walker pick 6. I keep looking back on that play and cackling, but that's another great example of making the most of a play when it's there. And boy, making the most of that play is exactly what Quay Walker did. Early on in the run back, it didn't look like there was any chance he was going to go anywhere. It ran directly into a Bears player, stayed on his feet, maybe got some help staying on his feet by the fact that he did run into a Bears player and eventually ended up in the end zone. And that was that. Stealing those big plays, getting those enormous plays in high leverage situations, that's a good way to make things a lot easier for yourself on offense and on defense, because once you build a lead, it makes a barely two-dimensional player in Justin Fields into an extremely one-dimensional player. And then once that happens, things gets really ugly for the Bears offense. Overall, about as good as you could possibly hope for in this game. Just from a narrative perspective, from an execution perspective, from Jordan Love just playing well perspective, shoot, I don't really know what else you could ask for. Let's dive into our three good things. As you know, for potential new listeners here, we like to talk about three good things from every game because every game has good things and bad things. So we'll talk about three good things, three maybe not so good things, though I've only got two for you this time. If we really stretched, we could probably get to a third. But then we'll talk about, where we go from here and overall what this game means before diving into some more individualized observations. So the good things for this game. First, Jordan Love. I think the story has to start there. I think you could quibble about the results. They are not necessarily indicative of how he played. Some of the big numbers that he got, through the air were not a result of things that he did. Putting the ball in the air and stuff like that. The screen racks up a lot of yards for him that are not necessarily his doing. Same goes on the 4th and 3 play. But shoot, in terms of getting the job done, he did it. A big part of the job is 3rd and 4th down stuff. And by my count, the Packers were 3 of 6 on 3rd and 7 or more, at least in the part of the game that mattered. Just going 50% on 3rd and pretty long is a huge vote of confidence or a huge step in the right direction for Jordan Love. And that shows how far he's come as a player. It takes a lot to execute in 3rd and long situations. And right off the bat, he got a chance to do that and completed a 12-yard pass to Romeo Doubs on the first 3rd down of the game. That really set the tone for what he was going to be capable of doing on this particular afternoon, and he did it. It was a great effort by Jordan Love today. Second good thing was the pass rush. Really got after Justin Fields. This is something we mentioned in the preview. Fields has a tendency to put himself in situations where he can get sacked and hit a lot. Well, he got sacked and hit a lot. 6 quarterback hits, 4 sacks, including 2 in situations designed specifically to get Justin Fields to the edge of the formation. You have Lucas Van Ness tracking him down in the red zone, Devontae Wyatt hammering him on the bootleg. That Wyatt play in particular was, I thought, a thing of beauty. They had a really tight replay where you could see Fields running the play action. So faking the handoff to, I forget, maybe it was Roschon Johnson. It doesn't really matter. But he's faking the handoff, and you can see behind him with Fields has his back to Wyatt. You can see Wyatt tracking the ball. So he knows he's unblocked. He realizes why he's unblocked because he's supposed to be the sucker on this play. He's supposed to get sucked in by that play action, saving yourself a blocker so that Fields can get out on the bootleg and just have some room to operate there. Wyatt does not get suckered there. He watches the ball, makes sure Fields has it, and then tracks him down and hits him hard. Terrific stuff. Tracked the ball, got to Fields, blew up the play. You could not ask for more. Just terrific play and terrific athleticism from Van Ness in the red zone, stringing out the play. You could almost see some surprise in Fields' body language that Van Ness was able to get to him. Finally, and to circle back to Aaron Jones, tremendous day at the office for him. 11 total touches, 127 yards, 2 touchdowns. By my research, this was the 50th time in Packers history where a player had 11 or fewer touches and 125 or more yards from scrimmage and 2 touchdowns. As you might guess, everybody else on that list was a wide receiver. There aren't too many guys that are putting up 125-plus yards from scrimmage and 2 touchdowns just on the ground. But a big part of his day was on the ground, though he did, have 80-something yards through the air as well. But this appears to be the first time in Packers history that a running back has done that, at least according to one search that I made from Pro Football Reference. In any case, it's a relatively rare performance, put it that way. Only 50 times in Packers history has a guy had 11 or fewer touches and 125 or more yards from scrimmage, as well as 2 touchdowns. It feels like just about every game we have a stat like that for Aaron Jones, starting 2023 off with no exception. 3 bad things, though. Well, it feels like pushing it to really get to 3 in a game like this, so let's just stick with 2. The first one is the tackling. it is early in the season. They have not done a lot of live tackling yet, so give it a little bit of a pass here. But they probably could have doubled their sack total on Justin Fields with a little bit more solid tackling. Jair Alexander, in particular, I think is going to be getting some grief in the film room tomorrow because he got shook pretty good by Justin Fields on a cornerback blitz. Now, Fields not the easiest guy in the world to bring down. He's built like a running back, and he runs like a running back. And the Packers learned firsthand that you have to do a little bit more to bring him down than you're necessarily going to do for some of the less mobile quarterbacks out there. But some of that has to get cleaned up, and the bad tackling was not necessarily limited to Fields either. He's just the most visible example. The other thing I want to talk about, and this may be the first entry in what could be an ongoing storyline this year, but I wonder if it's time to have a little bit of concern for A.J. Dillon. Now, the Packers had 3 running backs carry the ball today: Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, and Patrick Taylor. And Dillon was the third most productive by a fairly wide margin. Just 13 carries, or he had 13 carries, just 19 yards on those 13 carries. Patrick Taylor, for comparison, put up more yards, 22, on 8 fewer carries. Just needed 5 carries to get to 22 yards. It's not like he's running behind a different offensive line, and neither is Aaron Jones. Dillon just appears to have no juice at all in the ground game and doesn't really contribute all that much as a passer. Had 2 catches today for, I think, 17 yards. Had 1 pretty bad drop in the flat on the right side, too. But you would like a little bit more from your number 2 running back here. And in a contract year, A.J. Dillon is going to have to show quite a bit more than he showed today if the Packers are going to even think about trying to bring him back in the future. Those are pretty, I think, nitpicky things for a 38-24 win over your arch rival in Week 1, the first game of a new era. So moving past those quickly, let's talk about what this means. In the grand scheme, I think this game means both nothing and everything for the Green Bay Packers. It means nothing because it's one game. It means nothing because it's September. It means nothing because there are 16 more of these games. But in some other ways, it means everything, too. We mentioned the word narrative earlier. Think about that for a little bit. Expectations left, right, and center for Jordan Love have been high. Everybody, even casual, I think, observers of the Packers has been expecting big things from Love. The pressure has been visible and loud. And imagine if Jordan Love came out today and put up Justin Fields' stat line. 216 yards on 37 attempts, a bad interception, a fumble, losing, say if the score was reversed, getting hammered on the road by your arch rival. Just imagine the density of takes. It would be unbearable. You couldn't log on the internet tomorrow or tonight. You just could not escape it. You might as well cancel the rest of the Packers season the way that people would be reacting. But the Packers did win, and Jordan Love did play pretty well. Not perfect, sure, some room for growth there, but in terms of the narrative, and the narrative does matter, because that's how people talk about your team. In terms of those kind of things, Jordan Love had a pretty, unquestionably good game. The stats look good. The result looks good. 3 touchdowns, nearly 250 yards. No complaints there, really. The narrative is really solid. But on a more practical level, think about something we talked about back in, I think, the 2019 season pretty regularly. The idea of stacking early wins. The first month of the season, as we said in the preview, everybody is figuring things out. Teams are figuring out who they are. They're figuring out how their actual team aligns with what they thought they were trying to put together. If you drop a couple games early on, it's not really that surprising. But if you can come out and stack a bunch of wins while everybody is figuring out who they are, it makes it that much harder for everybody else to catch up to you. Now, I don't want to sit here after Week 1 and start talking about playoffs. I can picture Jim Mora's voice in the back of my head right now. But when you start thinking about the playoffs a month or two from now, it's really helpful to have things like a week 1 road win in your back pocket. And if you get another one of those next week in Atlanta, well, then you're in really good shape. Speaking of, what happens next? Well, the Packers head to Atlanta to face the Falcons. The Falcons took care of business against the Panthers today, winning 24-10. Packers going to have their work cut out for them to start 2-0. It's not impossible, but it's going to take some work. The Packers, though, showed they are capable of getting things done on the road. They did it today. I see no reason they can't do it again in week 2 on the road in Atlanta next weekend. Let's talk about the Packers rookie class. They've got a bunch of this year's draft class still on the roster. Not everybody active today, not even everybody even still on the roster. But among the guys that were there, we've got quite a bit to talk about. Lucas Van Ness finishes the day, 2 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Not spectacular, but a pretty nice play against Justin Fields down there in the red zone. Luke Musgrave finishes his NFL debut with 3 catches for 50 yards. Should have had at least 1 touchdown, but alas that was not. I believe that was tight end leak there that the Packers ran to get Luke Musgrave open. Just a play designed to take advantage of his speed that relies on Jordan Love taking a lot of time behind the line of scrimmage, and it helps to take up a little time when you fumble the ball and are able to pick it up. But Luke Musgrave just completely wide open there, ends up backpedaling down the field, and if he was able to gather that pass in without stumbling, he would have just walked into the end zone. Nevertheless, just a couple plays later, Jordan Love throws a really nice ball to Romeo Doubs for the score. So Love is not robbed of the touchdown, but Musgrave sure was. Jaden Reed also fairly productive today. 2 catches, 48 yards, was great in the punt return game as well. Don't have his official numbers there in front of me, but did have 5 targets. So just 2 catches on 5 targets. I think this game showed pretty definitively why contested catches should not be considered anybody's primary skill set. He is just not big enough to do that at the NFL level. He's got some learning to do. But we saw that same sort of thing with Romeo Doubs last year. Getting stronger at the catch point is a thing that a lot of rookie receivers have to do. Jaden Reed, just the latest in a long line. And the Packers still showed that there are going to be plenty of opportunities for him to be involved in this offense. Tucker Kraft played, but I did not have a recordable stat for him today. Colby Wooden, 1 tackle. Sean Clifford made it into the game, handed off a couple times today. Dontavion Wicks, 2 targets, no catches, including 1 target that was way behind him on a slant. Love's accuracy was not perfect start to finish in this one, and Wicks, unfortunately, the recipient of a couple less than accurate passes, but still was out there and ready to go. Carl Brooks, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Most impressive sack of the day for my money, I thought. Just a nice little quasi-stunt with Preston Smith, looping around the outside and chasing Fields down. Really nice to see. Anders Carlson, perfect day. 1 for 1 on field goals, 5 for 5 on extra points. His field goal, 52 yards, got every bit of that one. Truly perfect debut. Carrington Valentine finishes the day, 2 tackles. Anthony Johnson rounding out the rookie class, or at least among the guys that are still on the roster from the rookie class, with an inactive today, was a healthy scratch. Overall, I would have to say heck of a day for the rookie class, in my opinion. No real complaints there. Some minor things from both Reed and Musgrave, but still solid contributions up and down the roster from the rookie class. Let's empty out the notebook with a couple random observations, then call it a day. Send you into the start of your week to celebrate a Packers win. Uniform breakdown today. Not going to do it as formally as we've done it in the past, specifically last year, but great looking day at the ballpark. Packers in their road whites. Maybe it was my TV, maybe it was how the weather was in Chicago, but the yellows looked especially cheddary today for the Packers. Just hard to look bad when you have these 2 teams on the field. For my money, every Packers-Bears yearly series needs at least 1 game played in perfect weather and then 1 game played in just awful weather. We got the perfect weather game, and looking ahead to January when the Packers will play the Bears again, I think there's a pretty good chance that we're going to get some nasty weather, at least some cold weather for that one as well. So mark your calendars for Week 18 in Lambeau Field. The Packers face off with the Bears. Speaking of uniform stuff, you may have noticed some small jersey patches on a few of the Packers players. This was a new initiative from the National Football League that they announced a few days ago, earlier this week. They call it the NFL Premier Program. And from their official news release, this is, quote, the first ever jersey patch program created to recognize and celebrate each rookie's first game in the NFL. All rookie players on a 53-man roster to start the 2023 NFL season will wear an exclusive NFL Premier patch on their jersey during Week 1. Subsequently, any rookies making their NFL debut over the course of the season will wear the same patch during their first game. The game-worn jerseys will be gifted to the rookies to further honor their first in-season game, end quote. Neat little program, something I had not seen before, so if you noticed those patches on a few of Packers players during the game, that was what was going on, and the Packers had a few players, as we talked about, quite a few players making debuts today. Elsewhere, in terms of new stuff in this game, we saw no fair catches on kickoffs as far as I saw today. Now, I did have a couple of kids crawling all over me during the game, so it's possible that I may have missed one. But this was a new rule in the offseason. Any kickoff, fair caught within the, 25 yards within the 25 yards closest to the goal line, so basically your red zone-ish area, you can advance the ball out to the 25. It's basically an extra touchback. The Bears in particular, where I thought burned by not doing this a few times, I wonder if we'll see teams adapt to this over the course of the season, because teams are leaving yards on the field, and it hurt the Bears in particular a few times throughout this game. As far as the Packers offense went, it definitely was different in some ways from the Aaron Rodgers era offense. The Packers opened the game with a lot of pistol stuff. They had a read option toss on the Packers' second play of the game. And Jaden Reed got hammered really, really bad on that one. I'm not opposed to running those. I don't think it's one the Packers should just throw out of the playbook, but they just happened to run it right into a really good look from Chicago. Tremaine Edmonds tracked Jordan Love pretty effortlessly. Was set up to read the pitch there, and they were ready to tee off on Jaden Reed as soon as Love made the pitch. I think maybe do a little bit of fine-tuning on that one, but again, I think it's a good idea, and they should definitely be open to the idea of using Jordan Love's legs in the future. Just hope for a better look from the defense next time. Finally, and I guess this is another uniform-related thing, but it doesn't look like the Packers are going to have permanent captains this year. According to Packers.com, they'll be rotating captains throughout this year. The Packers named 3 captains for this game: Aaron Jones, Kenny Clark, and Dallin Levitt. Next week, it'll be somebody different. I don't know how I feel about not going with permanent captains, but they just went in a different direction this year, and I guess different is not always bad. In any case, if concerns over permanent captains and jersey patches are about as in-depth as we get in this one, I think we're in really good shape, and I think it's hard to, spin it any other way than that the Packers came out of Week 1 in really, really awesome shape. Really encouraging game, encouraging stuff from Jordan Love, encouraging stuff from the Packers offense. Nothing to complain about as far as I'm concerned. Sure, there's some stuff to work on. We'll figure that out later on in the week as the Packers continue to build, and they've got a win to build on coming out of Week 1. Hope you enjoyed it, because that's all I've got for you on this episode of Blue 58. I appreciate you tuning in, and I would appreciate it even more if you would share this episode with someone you think would enjoy it. That's going to help more people find the show and get more people involved in this conversation that you and I are having about the Green Bay Packers, which in turn is going to help all of us, me included, become smarter Packers fans. And as I always say, smarter Packers fans are better Packers fans, and better Packers fans are what we all want to be. I'm your host, John Meerdink. We'll see you next time